Hey everybody, I'm Seth,
I'm Rachel.
and today we're going to be teaching you guys how to stretch a screen printing screen on a budget.
And at home. Okay, so today we are going to be stretching a screen on a wooden frame. This is an old screen printing frame that we've used, and we're just going to stretch it again today. This is a method that I've been using for years without problems. The startup costs are small, the supplies are super easy to find, and the process is really simple. It doesn't take much time at all. That being said, if you are going to be doing a lot of detail or high amount of production, you may want to invest in an aluminum screen like this. These screens are great, but they do require a fair amount of money if you want to get it restretched. Either send it in professionally, or if you want to do it at home, it's just a high amount of startup costs. So we're going to go the budget route, which works great if you're screen printing at home. So let's get started.
The first part of any successful project is making sure that you have all the necessary supplies on hand. Pictured here are all the materials that you will need to complete this project. You can also find a complete list in the video description below. Step 1. Align the mesh.
First, cut your mesh so that it's about 1 to 2 inches larger than the size of your frame on each side, and then take your factory cut edges and line those up so that they are flush with the outside edges of your frame. Then plug a staple into the corner and then hold the mesh taut but not too tight on the opposite side, and just plug in staples 1 to 2 inches along the entire edge of the frame. Do that for the first 2 sides.
Step 2. Check for even tension.
Once you've attached mesh to the first 2 sides of the frame, you'll want to check to make sure the gaps between your staples are not too far apart. To do this, hold the mesh at the opposite end from where your staples are and gently tug the mesh. If the mesh easily pulls away from the frame, you should add another staple to that gap.
Step 3. Trim your mesh, if necessary.
If you have a lot of mesh hanging over the edge of your frame, just go ahead and cut it down to about 1 or 2 inches.
Step 4. Stretch that screen.
Okay, it is canvas pliers time. You want to grab your mesh kind of at the outer edge of the frame and just pull down and towards yourself. That's going to tighten up the tension. You can just tap the mesh, make sure it feels about right, and then you just plug in 3 or 4 staples along the width of your canvas pliers. Then you just repeat that process all the way along the edge of the screen. You do want to make sure that your tension is not too tight and not too loose. It's too tight if when you're pulling towards yourself, the staples are beginning to rip on the opposite side of the screen, and it's too loose if your tension is just not even. When you tap it, it kind of like sinks down rather than staying taut. So just adjust where you're grabbing the mesh with your canvas pliers a little bit closer or a little bit further apart, and that should solve any tension problems you have. It may take a little bit to fiddle around with it. Then we're going to want to do the last side here. This is the most important side because this is your final shot at getting even tension. So go ahead. You might have to pull the pliers a little bit tighter than you did last time. Might be a little bit more resistant, but same process. Just double check your tension before you put those staples in, and you should be good to go.
Step 5. Caulk the inner frame.
Flip your screen over to the other side, grab your caulk, and we're just going to put a line of caulk all the way along the entire perimeter of the frame. Basically, there's a gap between the mesh and the frame now, and later on when we're printing, we don't want emulsion or ink to get into that gap because it would be extremely hard to clean. So we're just going to go ahead and seal that up. Afterwards, just run your finger all the way along the edge of the caulk to make sure that all surfaces are covered. Double check the corners and wait for it to dry.
Step 6. Apply matte medium.
Here I'm applying 1 coat of matte medium to the inside perimeter of the frame. Later on when we coat our screen with emulsion, it's not going to reach the very outside edges of the frame, so this just acts as an extra added protection so that when we are printing with our ink, the ink doesn't accidentally get through on our design. If you really don't want to buy matte medium and you don't happen to have it at home, you're welcome to take screen printing tape and tape the inside perimeter of your frame once your stencil has been burned. I actually generally tend to both tape and apply matte medium. It's just an extra mode of precaution that I recommend, but is not necessary if you really don't want to do it.
Step 7. Scour the screen. For the final step, sprinkle a small amount of baking soda over the screen. Next, Take a wet rag or sponge and gently scrub the surface. The abrasion created by the scrubbing will allow us to evenly coat our emulsion over the surface of the screen. Once this step is completed, give it a quick rinse and you're good to go. So now your screen should be fully stretched and ready for printing.
And take note, it should feel a little bit like a drum. Pretty good even tension, that should do the trick.
Nice drum.
Thank you. Don't worry too much about how beautiful your edges look. This is a DIY project and your stencil's never gonna get that close to the edge anyway because you won't be able to print. So go ahead, try it out, have fun. Feel free to ask any questions in the comments.
And if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like and subscribe.
Thanks for watching.
Sweet.